Sanjay Kumar Verma ji, Ambassador of India to Japan. He will be delivering his keynote speech now.
First of all, let me congratulate the organizers of Konnichiwa Pune 2021 and IGBC to take this step forward and start preparation even before the COVID has been declared ended. And I wish you all the best in your endeavor to take things forward. Now, since the entire discussion is on what we need to do post-COVID, so first of all, we will need to understand what has already been happening pre-COVID. Only then we can see where are the disruptions, what needs to be fixed, or if we need to just continue the way in which we were doing our business earlier. So one thing is very clear, that there is an induced change. And this induced change was not very easy for traditional societies such as India and Japan. It took some time for both the countries and the actors in both the countries to get used to the new normal. But I'm glad to tell you that the new normal is here, and in Japan as well, they have accepted the new normal as the digital world with open arms. It has led both the societies, including the businesses, towards a better digitization, but at the same time digitalization. And we have to understand the nuances of the two in order to take advantage of the situation which has now dawned upon us. One thing for sure, we haven't realized this so much, but the pace of interaction has increased. Earlier, I was attending probably a couple of conferences a week. These days, I'm attending many more than that. So basically, the pace of interaction has increased. But at the same time, the human relationship, which is on touch and feel kind of basis, that has been left behind somewhere. And therefore, we need to reconnect. And that is where I see the need for going back to pre-COVID situations. That is, again, to get touch and feel kind of approach in order to take things forward, but with digitalization and digitization on our mind. So what it means is basically we are looking at some of the advantages that we gained before COVID and some of the advantages we gained during the COVID. COVID had been bad for all of us, but it also taught us some new lessons. And these new lessons have been very important in order to increase the intensity of interactions. It also puts a huge challenge in front of us, that since the pace of interaction has increased, we have less lead time to achieve results. And that is very, very important to understand, because there are societies we are very good at planning, but not so good at agile reaction. There are societies which take decisions on the run, but not very good in planning. So therefore, now we need to look at the entire ecosystem through which we are able to deal with the less lead time available to us. I'll later on talk about it a little more. I was asked also to talk about the history of our bilateral relationship. I think that is something which is well known, so I'll spend very little time on that. And the historical part, the part of Buddhism and the Indian monk coming to Japan, that is a well-known fact, so I'm not going to dwell upon that. But if we look at the present situation, our relationship has become a partnership, and that is what is to be seen. Earlier, we used to talk about the bilateral relationship. These days, we talk about bilateral partnership. And this partnership has a special name, which is a Spatial Strategic and Global Partnership, which basically talks about everything which is there in the cart to carry forward. It's a spatial strategic, so we can talk about the geopolitics, geostrategy, and at the same time global, which means the bilateral partnership is not limited to our two countries, but it has to be taken forward in third countries as well. While doing so, we are human beings, and therefore we have a way to jump to the conclusion quickly. We need to grade our ambition. Yes, India and Japan is a wonderful partnership, It's moving forward with a certain pace, but everything will not happen just tomorrow. We have to take our ambition in a graded and phased manner. And all these graded ambition will have to dovetail into each other so that we do not lose anything when we move forward. Otherwise, what happens in most of the relationships, that when we move forward, we leave behind some of the past achievements. We have to carry those achievements forward, whether it is on the soft power, whether it is on education, whether it is on tourism, skill development, etc. So we have to take these things forward, and only then we will be able to take full advantage of the gamut which is available to us of especially strategic and global partnership. Cultural part of the relationship is very important, and this cultural part is not about reminiscing what our cultures are, how have they been interacting, but in order to understand today's culture of the two countries. For example, the Vedic culture in India, that was yesteryears. Today it has got mutated into a new culture, which is the Indian culture. And therefore, all of us need to be mindful of the existing cultural situation in the two countries and launch the cultural dialogue on the basis of our past, but looking at the present situation and finally focusing on the future. So when we talk of culture, we have to be extremely clear on this aspect, that while you make your foundations on the past, understand the present and then focus on the future. When we look at our bilateral partnership, geopolitics is a very important element and factor. But when we look at the geopolitics, we should not try to bind ourselves into compartments. Geopolitics had never been a compartment. It was also according to the time that we are transversing through, and through that time we learn about new elements of the geopolitics and take it forward. Many a times our thought leaders also mix geopolitics with geostrategy. Many times they could be the same, but there could be times when they could be different. And therefore, we have to understand that convergence in geopolitics does not necessarily mean 100% convergence in geostrategy as well. So that is something which is very important to understand when we talk of Indo-Pacific construct, when we talk of Quad construct, when we talk of JAI, when we talk of IPOI, when we talk of SCRI and similar other architectures which are available to us to collaborate and partner with Japan, including other countries. When we talk of P2P, people-to-people relationships, soft power plays an immensely important role for the kind of cultures that India and Japan have. That also, in a way, softens the fall of a foreign element in the domestic culture. So when we talk of some of the Japanese elements which had never been present in Indian culture or Indian ethos, the promotion of soft power in a way makes the landing softer and therefore more acceptable to the people in India. And same is the situation with India. There could be many kinds of traditional mechanisms in India, traditional dances, traditional songs, traditional practices, which may be a bit far from the Japanese culture, and therefore we need to look at soft landing of our soft power approach between our two countries. There are commonalities between the two countries as far as the soft powers are concerned. There we need to sit together and think, can we take these common soft power elements to third countries and the world? That's an important consideration, which is yet not a matter of discussion in the think tank ecosystem. Education becomes very, very important as a factor to relate the two people. And when we talk of education, it's language, it's technology, it's liberal art, it's management styles, everything put together. And therefore, education by itself can open up a Pandora's box with so many elements there for us to follow up with. Therefore, we'll need to take each element by itself and see whether each element has a convergence or not. If not, how can we converge them? We should not talk about education as a sector, because each subsector will need convergence if we need to take education sector forward. When we talk of education, the skilling, reskilling, and human resources cannot be left behind. We know the demographic dividend that we have. We know the situation of demography in Japan, so I will not labor on that. But I will remind the audience that there is a clear complementarity between our two countries. And that is why the two governments decided to sign agreements on training of interns, as well as SSW, which is the specialized skilled workers coming from India to Japan. All these depend a lot on the kind of skill set that we have acquired, on the kind of standardization of the skill set and certification of the skill sets that we have, whether they are able to converge with the Japanese skill standardization certification system. If not, what can be done, and how can we sell our human resources to the Japanese market, which is very much eager to take them on, because Indian human resources are taken as, in terms of a Japanese prime minister, in words of a Japanese prime minister, as excellent human resources. So therefore, we may pay more attention on this. It is not only a service as a part of the bilateral trade. It's not only a trade in service. It is much more than that. Because when a person comes here, of course, he or she is providing service to the society, but she is also a moving ambassador of India, a roaming ambassador of India. And therefore, whatever that person reflects here, people would think that that is what India stands for. So therefore, before we send these human resources to countries outside India, they need to understand all these areas which I talked about earlier: the cultural convergence, the graded ambition, the geopolitics, the geostrategy. I don't want them to be experts on them, but they should be sensitive to all these aspects of bilateral partnership. Indo-Pacific is a very important construct in this part of the world. It just offers a platform. It's not an architecture. It doesn't have a multilateral kind of arrangement. So it's a very inclusive construct wherein the countries are free to talk to each other, decide on various aspects. But when this philosophy or vision was being seen, something was thought about as to how to implement this. Because if it only remains just a philosophy, then it's very difficult to make people understand that it can play a role in upliftment of the region and making the region more competitive in the world. When I say competitive, it is not only on business and trade, it's much beyond that, and therefore it includes all kinds of elements which a human society intends to achieve. So for that purpose, India launched IPOI, which are initiatives and which has got 7 pillars, and each country, partner country, has taken up 1 pillar to develop it further. Japan has taken the pillar of maritime trade and connectivity, which it is driving forward. Now, let me go to the Indo-Japan Business Council, which has organized Konnichiwa Pune 2021. The most important part of doing business at the moment is to understand each other's culture of doing business. So earlier I largely talked about the culture per se, but even the culture of doing business in the two countries are different. So how do we converge them? How do we bring them on the same platform? How do we bring them on the same table so that they are able to understand each other's culture of doing business and at the same time learn to tolerate each other's culture of doing business? I always say that, between two great civilizations, one civilization cannot tell the other civilization to change the ways in which it becomes one-to-one mapping on the earlier civilization. It's extremely difficult. So Indians the way of doing business in India will remain the way of doing business in India. But when it will interact with the way of doing business in Japan, there will be amendments, and these amendments will happen the same way in which the Japan will do business with India. So what does it mean? It means that we need to understand each other's business culture very well, and the way in which these business cultures are demonstrated in doing business. That could be a big task for any business council or chamber of commerce or chamber of industry to educate its members on both sides as to how to understand and converge with the culture of the country where they are planning to do trade, investment, or collaborations. In moving forward from here, if we could recall how did Japan become a global economic power in after Second World War, it was largely on the basis of innovation. It was largely on the basis of new products. Same thing, in my view, is going to happen again. There is no world war, but the same thing is going to happen because the world has become much more equitable as compared to what it was 70 years back. And therefore, what I would suggest is that the keyword for India-Japan interactions, partnership, should be innovation. And when I talk of innovation, innovation is not only technology. Innovation could also be social sector. Innovation could also be the way in which we amend our approach towards each other. Innovation could also be to devise new business practices when we interact with each other. So innovation is the key. And what is the main element of an innovation? Disruption. So unless there is a disruption, there is no innovation. There will be no innovation taking place. Indian innovation ecosystem is known to be very agile, and I hope that our Japanese friends can take the advantage of a very agile innovation system in India. Some of the innovations will always fall the wayside, but that's the way the innovations are done. And here I'm very glad to tell you that Japan has taken notice of and has invested both the money and management and administration in Indian startup ecosystem, which is supposed to be innovating quite swiftly and innovating solutions which world require. So we have to look at the business practices of being plan-centric to being solution-centric due to disruptions. These two approaches will have to mix together so that we are able to innovate new products and services, not only for two of us, but also to take into the larger global market. So innovation has various steps, and as I see it, it's completely my view that any such chain will involve co-innovation, co-creation, and co-production. What is co-innovation? Co-innovation is when the two societies have similar problems, not the same problems, they meet together, they discuss it, and then they co-innovate a solution. Now that solution has been co-innovated but not tested. So we are not sure whether that solution will work. So therefore, after co-innovating, we need to move to the second stage, which is co-creating. So you create the products and services on the basis of innovation, which both sides had created or thought of together. And this solution is created, piloted in the two societies, and thereafter the feedback taken and goes into the third domain, which is co-production. This is the place where the industry is coming to play. So the first two ones are for the innovation ecosystem to take care of. The last one, where it is to be produced at the industrial level, is where the companies which are masters in manufacturing, they need to come in and then take these things forward. There has to be a realistic approach. The two countries cannot find solutions for everything, and therefore we have to be realistic on our strengths and weaknesses and work on our own SWOT analysis in bilateral partnerships and of course innovation ecosystem to take things forward in a more realistic way. We need not duplicate or replicate each solution which other countries are devising. So if we get stuck to devising solutions for 5G technologies which are already available in the world, we are just duplicating the things, wasting our resources and time. So therefore, the two innovation ecosystem needs to look forward. If the innovation gestation period is at 3 years, look for 5 years, where the world will be in 5 years' time from now, and then try to co-innovate, take a realistic approach, and give services and products to the world. Technology will play a major role in this. Both the countries are very strong in technology. Japan is extremely strong in physical technologies. What do I call as physical technologies is, say, electronics, for example. We are very good at soft technologies, which are coding, etc. So our code cannot be embedded unless there are electronics to be embedded with. Similarly, the Japanese electronics cannot be a complete solution unless there are codes to be embedded on it. So it's an ideal complementarity between our two countries, which we can take forward in the post-COVID world as well. SWOT analysis is very important, as I said earlier. We have to, first of all, as a business council, IJBC, if they can look at mapping their strengths and weaknesses beyond hearsay. Now, why I'm using the word hearsay is that there is a hearsay that all Indians are very good at mathematics. There is a hearsay that Japanese management style will fit into any situation. All these are hearsays. So please map strengths and weaknesses beyond hearsay on a realistic, in a realistic manner on the realities on the ground. Once that is done, then the future path becomes much easier. Then we know what are the fields where we can collaborate, co-innovate, co-create, and co-produce. Here, in the world of technology in particular, each solution lasts a very short time. So shelf life of solutions is getting reduced by the day. And therefore, agility of innovation is very important if we want to reduce the threat. In SWOT, the last part, the threat. So threat needs to be reduced for us to be successful, and only agility can reduce the threat in the technology innovation world. We should also be mindful of converting opportunities. Many times what happens is the opportunities can easily be seen, but then the actors are not able to convert those opportunities into businesses, into trades, into advantages. So any opportunity which comes in will remain in your window or a door for a very small time. So unless we are agile, we will not be able to convert our opportunities into advantages. That's an extremely important aspect. Energy security for both the countries is very important. Japan doesn't have much of fossil fuel or other sources of energy. The wind power could have been there, but again, sea is very rough. It is very deep on the ground. That is onshore. The plain areas are lacking. There are too many mountains and hills. So on both the countries, and in India we know, so I'm not going to labor on India's need of securing energy. So both of us have external dependence on our current energy metrics. So we need to sit together, we need to talk about the technology which can reduce our external dependence to secure energy and move towards a carbon neutral world, which is again, it's not too far. It looks like 2050, that Japan has announced to become carbon neutral. Is too far. It is not, because so many technological developments will need to take place. All these are stepped approach, and therefore, while going from 0 to 100, at every stage there will be new technologies which will be introduced in our societies in the world. Infrastructure is very important. So through infrastructure, the connectivity plays a huge role, not only domestically in India or in Japan, but also in the region. Infrastructure also tells the region that we are their friend. We are there to assist and help them for them to connect with us better through these infrastructure projects. All these infrastructure projects will have to keep in mind that they are facilitation projects. They create small ecosystems for economic growth and wealth creation. And in today's infrastructure, one of the most important infrastructure is digital infrastructure. So when we talk of infrastructure, in yesteryears we used to talk about air, ocean, and land. But now we have to also seriously talk about digital infrastructure, and both countries can work together on digital infrastructure and take it forward, not only for the two of them, but for the entire world. We have to look at beyond trade. Trade is difficult and easy, both. It all depends which way do you look at it. We have to look at the resilient supply chain, and that is where there will be enhanced trade. That is where there will be incremental investment in both the countries, in the two sides. So that is what we need to keep in mind for our future. When we talk of trade, let's not be ambivalent about the standards and certification which are required to trade between any two countries, cross-border transactions. So if the Indian products are able to satisfy Japanese codes and Japanese certificates, then it will have a better chance to be imported into Japan. Of course, the market need has to be there. Investment has to be there. Again, I'm talking about beyond trade, so supply chain is important. Investment in the future will be very important both for physical products, but as well as intangibles. So bourses, security exchanges, these are also good vehicles for enhancement of exposure to each other's countries and take things forward from there. My time is almost over, so before I end, I'll only suggest to all the stakeholders to look at their own domain of expertise and try to convert their expertise into advantage for our bilateral partnership and the relation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar. Arigatou gozaimasu.